Hello again, audiophiles. I am Wave Theory, back to do more reviews of sound gear, and oh my goodness, it's a speaker, right? If you've been following my young YouTube channel, you see that I have done mostly headphone gear, or gear that can be used in headphone systems. And I mentioned at the launch of this channel that I wanted to get into reviewing speakers as well. I am now in a life position where that makes sense to do, and so I have been doing that. It just takes some time to get used to the different sound presentations and learning the market context and that sort of thing. So today, we're going to dive into my first speaker review, and that is going to be of the Elac Elac Uni-Fi UB52 speaker. All right, so then real quick, again, I am Wave Theory. I have been doing written reviews of headphone gear mostly, okay, now speakers, in written form on HeadFi and Hi-Fi Guides forum for over a year now, so please check out my work there. And if you are a fan of headphones, don't fear, I have plenty of headphone gear coming up for you in the near future, so I am not abandoning that scene at all. I am just adding to it. All right, so the Elac Uni-Fi UB52 speaker. Just shy of $700 US per pair, and they are on sale right now as of this filming, and it is Friday, October 22nd, 2021, when I filmed this video. Okay, they are on sale at places like Amazon and Crutchfield and direct from Elac for $455. Okay, so if you've been thinking about these, now is a good time to move on it, because I will say just up front here that I think at $700, this is a lot of speaker for the money. It is a really excellent speaker, and even at $700, it is quite a deal. That price gets under $500, and it goes from deal to steal really quick, okay? This is a really great speaker. I highly recommend it. Okay, and we'll get into why that is, but if you're watching and you're on the fence, knowing that price right now, hit pause on this video and go buy this. Okay, why do I say that? All right, so let's get some specs out of the way here first. It is a three-way bass reflex design, right, with crossover frequencies between the woofer and the mid-range here set at 200 hertz, and then a crossover between the mid-range driver and the tweeter that's inside here at, I have it written down here, where did it go? 2 kilohertz, so 2000 hertz. All right, now that's interesting because at this price point, there are not a ton of three-way speaker designs out there. And really, at first glance, it does not look like a three-way speaker because it looks like it has, you know, your 5¼ inch woofer and something like a waveguide, maybe. There are a lot of speakers that have a waveguide that they put their tweeter in. But no, this is a concentric or coaxial, whatever term you want to use, mid-range and tweeter assembly going on here, where inside the mid-range driver here, which is this aluminum color thing, because it is made out of aluminum, so is the woofer. Okay, but inside where the dust cap of the cone would be, there is a little metal grill, and then beneath that little metal grill, there is a soft dome tweeter, a 1-inch soft dome tweeter. Okay, and so that's another fairly unique feature at this price point. The only other company that I know of that does coaxially mounted drivers a lot would be Kef, and they tend to be a little bit more expensive. I think they do have some models in this price range, which I hope to check out at some point. I hope to check out all their speakers at some point, but at this price point, it's fairly unusual to see that. So we have this coaxially mounted mid-range and tweeter assembly and this 5¼ inch woofer right here. Okay, the woofer and the mid-range are made out of aluminum, and the tweeter is a soft dome material. Okay, the nominal impedance on this speaker is 6 ohms, and its sensitivity is rated at 85 decibels. So that means that it's not the easiest speaker to drive, so it is going to put somewhat of a demand on your amplifier, but it's also not the hardest speaker to drive. All right, so I drove this primarily with, it's an older amp now, but it's still a goodie, okay, an oldie but goodie. It's the Adcom GFA 555 Mark II power amp. All right, when I used it in my room. So behind where the camera is sitting in my room right now is where the speakers normally go. Right, and then I have this acoustic paneling that you see on the wall behind me to reduce reflections off the back wall, which is otherwise just all drywall in front of concrete. Okay, because I'm in a basement here. All right, and so when I listen to the speakers for critical listening, I usually have set up everything so that I and the two speakers form the vertices of an equilateral triangle, roughly. That is about 8 feet per side, okay, 8 feet in side length. All right, and so I've been using the Adcom amp to drive these, and then an original Shit Saga preamp with a Sylvania VT231 tube that was made in 1940-something, okay, in it. And usually using my Cord Hugo 2 as the DAC, and lately the Wi-Fi Zen Stream as a streamer to get music from my PC to the 2-channel system. Now, I have also listened to this on my desk in near field, being powered by a Parasound Zone Amp V3 or Z-Amp or ZAMP V3, okay, which I will do a review of as well here very soon, because that's also a little amp that you can still buy, and so you can hear my thoughts on that. So that was on a desktop being fed by whatever DAC I was evaluating on my desktop, or my Berkeley Audio Designs Alpha S2 DAC there on the desk. So that means I've listened to these both in room and near field, and they do great in both settings, right? So one thing that immediately jumps out to me about this speaker in terms of the sound is how good the spatial presentation is, right? This coax assembly right here of the mid-range and the tweeter being concentric gives everything just a wonderful point source sound to it. Like, all of the sounds are coming from the same spot. They're emanating from the same spot. This makes it rather placement friendly, I have found. It also just makes it sound like, just creates a very coherent spatial presentation. So sound staging is nice and big, not necessarily really wider than what the speakers are, but it's nice and big. There's some height to it. There's some nice depth to it for the price and all that. And then the imaging and the separation. So where images are placed, sonic images, and where things sound like they're coming from between the speakers is really fantastic. And the space between those sonic images, the separation between those, is also really good. And in fact, like, I know I have done a lot of headphone reviews, but the spatial presentation on this, just from a technical aspect, is really good, and probably as good, if maybe not just a little bit better, than a lot of headphones that I have heard that are pushing like $2,000 and more. Like, just the spatial presentation on this is just absolutely standout. Okay. Now, from a frequency response standpoint, it's a fairly neutral speaker. Now, I have not heard the original Uni-Fi UB5. Again, this is like the Mark II of that, where I understood the treble was rolled off a little bit. This is not like that. This is nice and sparkly, but never sharp or sibilant. There's a good treble extension and good treble presence, all of that. Now, at the other end, the bass does reach down pretty far. It extends fairly well for a 5 1/4 inch woofer in a bass reflex design, right? We have a little port down here. Okay, it is rated down to 46 kilohertz in its frequency response, and I think that's pretty accurate. It does get down there. It has some energy down that low that is useful. Now, in the really low bass, does it fill up like a medium size or larger listening room with bass? Not really. So I think a lot of users are going to want to supplement with a sub, and I have two. A lot of the times I use a little Polk PSW 505 in this system, which is an older sub that needs to be upgraded, and I will at some point. Just haven't gotten to it yet. Okay. But supplementing the real deep low end on this, but I can set that Polk sub down to 60 hertz, or the crossover at 60 hertz. And this is really good and usable. That blends pretty well, like all the way down to 60 hertz at least. So that's good there too. But things like bass texture are good. So, I mean, all of this is, of course, for $700. Remember, it is a $700 speaker. So you will find better, but just like at the price, it just seems really good in a lot of ways. Like, the detailed retrieval is excellent. I've already spoken about the spatial presentation. The timbre is really good. Like, pianos sound a lot like pianos, and voices a lot like voices, and all of that. So have I heard better detail retrieval and better spatial presentation? Yes, I have. Okay. Both in headphone and speaker form. But I mean, have I heard better at this price point? Probably not. Now, I am not as aware of the market context on speakers yet as I am with headphones because of life situation. I have just explored headphones more recently. So, but from what I have heard and what I'm able to gather, this is just really excellent. I do have a couple other speaker models. Like I had been using a Definitive Technology SM55 pair for a lot of years, and those are pretty good. Like they listed, I think, around $700-ish, I want to say, back in their day, and I think that was like a circa 2008 model, something like that. So, I mean, it's long in the tooth. But I listened to those for a long time, and this just is a step forward. Now, some of that is it's newer, and designers learn as they go, but it's a noticeable step forward above those Def Techs in terms of detail retrieval and timbre and spatial presence. I mean, really everything. Okay. Big jump up there. And I have also been evaluating some JMO C93 Mark IIs recently, and I'm not as familiar with those yet, but I can tell that they're not quite this. Okay, they're still very good, but they're not quite this. And so I will unpack that more. So I think this is really doing a lot, okay, at its price point. I mean, I don't know how many times I can keep beating that dead horse. Okay, really good speaker for the money. Okay, you get it below $500 as it is priced right now, and as I said, it goes from deal to steal. One quick thing I want to say about it then before I go is this port right here is front firing, so you can, if you want, push it up closer to a wall in terms of positioning. I still like to pull it out into the room when I listen to it critically, but you can push it right up to a wall. Now, this port is a little bit small in diameter, so air kind of comes rushing out of there really quick, and this is an amusing story. 1812 Overture, as if you've watched my headphone reviews, I like to use a lot for like mid-range detail retrieval and all of that, because there's just a lot going on in I use the Eric Kunzel and the Cincinnati Pops Orchestra version of it. And there's a lot going on at the end of that track. I mean, you've got a full symphony orchestra, you have a vocal choir, a bell choir, and then, of course, real cannon fire. And, by the way, these handle that pretty well on both amps. Even the little Parasound Zamp V3 in near field handled that really well. But this little port right here, like when the cannon fire goes off in that track, you can see the woofers really excurse, like a lot of excursion. They pop out a lot to push that amount of air. Well, the back wave comes out here, and it's just as much air, right? I mean, the cone doesn't change size based on which direction it moves. But coming out of this little bit of narrow diameter port, the air comes out really fast, and you can feel the gust of wind, even when I was about 8 feet away from the speaker. And so I was listening to this 1812 Overture going, hey, this speaker is doing a really good job holding all of this information together and being coherent, during this crazy track at pretty high volumes. And then all of a sudden a cannon goes off, and I feel this gust of air on my arm. And just think about that for a second. You hear a cannon, you feel a blast of air, and it just scared the crap out of me at first, right? I wanted to duck behind my chair, and then I realized what was going on is that the air for that was just rushing out of this port, and I could feel it. Now, having the grill on would probably block that some, but I listened without the grill. So anyway, that's just kind of a funny story, and also just know that might happen to you depending on what kind of music you like to listen to and hear. So yeah. So there again, you do need a little bit of power again on this. My little Zamp V3 works great in near field. This speaker works great in near field listening because of this coaxially mounted mid-range and tweeter assembly right here. But the little Zamp V3, it's not going to fill a bigger room of sound with these because they need a little bit more power. But then, of course, the Adcom, which has a ridiculous amount of power. It's like over 200 watts per channel at 8 ohms. pushes these just fine. So you don't need to go quite that crazy with this, but something a little bit more than that Z-Amp V3, unless you're in near field. It works just fine for near field, okay? Good low bass energy and all of that there. So, yeah, I think that covers the highlights, and it's kind of my first speaker review. I hope to keep learning more about speakers and bring you reviews of speakers. They won't come out at quite the rate that headphone reviews do because, well, they're not as easy to ship, okay? So, but I will start working on speakers and getting that out there to you as well. And if anyone wants to help with that, please let me know. All right, so again, I am Wave Theory, and this has been my review of the Elac Uni-Fi UB52 speaker. All right, until next time, enjoy the music.